In this video, we're going to be looking at getting started with the Dagger SDK for TypeScript. So the first thing we'll want to do is say Dagger develop and specify our SDK as TypeScript. Once this executes, you'll see our Dagger JSON will be updated to specify the SDK, which is TypeScript, and the source of our module. Now, if you look at this Dagger directory where our module has been generated, we'll see a number of things have been created, but most importantly, we have the source index.ts where our module code exists. So we have our main class here is getting started. So this is our module. Then we have a bunch of boilerplate here that's created to help us familiarize ourselves with the Dagger concepts. So if we look at this first function, container echo, for example, we can see that it takes in a string argument and returns a container. And then the most important part here is this DAG. So this is our instance of a Dagger client. And so with this client, we can do things like manipulate containers, directories, and much more. So in this case, we can see that we've created a container, and that container is from Alpine latest. And within that container, we're executing a command, which is just echoing the string that we've input to the function. In the second function, we can see that we pass in a directory, which is another Dagger type, and also a pattern string from within this container. We're going to mount that directory, and then using that pattern, we're going to grep for that pattern within that directory. You can see here that because this calls std out, or standard out, this is an evaluation of the container. So in this case, we're actually returning a type promise. And so this is an asynchronous function. Now, if we use the CLI and say Dagger functions, we can see that the CLI will tell us about all the functions available within our module right now and some information about them. So once this executes, we'll be able to see, now that this is completed executing, we can see our two functions and also a description about them. Notice this description matches the comment block above the function name. So within the code, you're able to add some notation to say what your functions do, and also some information about their arguments. Now, in this case, let's add another function, and let's say we have this index.html file that we want to serve from a container. So within our class getting started, we're going to add another function, and this function will be called, let's just get this a bit higher up, will be called web. And that function will take in a directory. So we can call that directory source. And this function will return a container. Now, using our instance of a Dagger client, we can create a container. And that container will be from Nginx. And within the Nginx container, we want to mount our directory that contains our index.html file. So we can say directory, there we go. And the default location within the Nginx container for serving HTML files happens to be share Nginx HTML. And so this is where we're going to put our directory called source. Now with this function, we can now call it using the CLI. So we can say Dagger call web, and our input called source is going to be our current directory, which is where that index.html file exists. And so once this runs, it's just going to evaluate that container. So we're returning a container type. It will run this pipeline and then do nothing more with it. Now that that container is evaluated, we could decide on some other things to do with it, such as push that container to a registry. We could save that container as a tarball to our host, or we could just run the container. So in this case, let's run the container so we can access our HTML files. So we want to mutate that container into a service. So we can say as service, and that service will be up at ports 80. And so once this evaluates, we'll see some output from Nginx so that we know that our container is running. Now that we can see the output from Nginx, we can see that we have this service up at these ports. And if we open a new terminal, we could say curl localhost, and now we can see that our service is running at that port. If you want to learn more about the Dagger SDK for TypeScript, go ahead and go over to docs.dagger.io, and then under Developer Guide, check out Developing with TypeScript, where we have sections on all the different concepts that will help you build great pipelines.